I am Thaufan from Andalas University, Indonesia, and a PhD candidate at Nagoya University, Japan. I am honored today to join this conference. I would like to make a presentation on my paper with the title Civil Society and Oligarchic Power, a case study of broadcast media reform in post-Suharto Indonesia. This presentation will touch first the background of the study, second the methodology, third finding and discussion, and finally fourth will be the conclusion. So let's get started from the background of the study. The background of the study. Historically, the broadcast media were controlled and developed by the Suharto regime and his family and cronies, and served as the agent of state of the new order, particularly in the 1980s and 1990s. And then in post-Reformasi, after the resignation of Suharto in 1998, media sociologically changed and transformed into more freely and market-driven media, along with reform promising regulation such as the Press Law of 1999 and the Broadcasting Law of 2002 and the Law of ITE, or Information and Electronic Transaction, of 2008. Those are regulations made democratically to promote democratization in the media sector after the Reformation. However, 2 decades after the Reformasi, oligarchic elite have been fully reconsolidating and organizing their power to hijack the democratization process, including regulation, and utilize the commercial media for their electoral interests. So, broadly speaking, one of important article of the Broadcasting Law of 2002 is to establish KPI, or Indonesian Broadcasting Commission, to safeguard and protect the public good from increasingly market-oriented media and elite interests, which tend to contradict the broadcasting law and public good. Indeed, KPI had already tried to play its role under civil society support to control private commercial media. However, those private commercial media had fought back by utilizing the political alliance with media owners and elite power from political parties to weaken KPI role and influence its selection process. KPI finally tends to look give up and neutral in the media sector. So therefore, civil society in the sector tried to not only criticize elite power and commercial media, but also to question KPI role to implement the Broadcasting Law of 2002 and promote public-oriented media in Indonesia. In short, civil society along with digital media are in a race to challenge the oligarchic power behind the commercial media and KPIs. So the methodology in this research utilized a case study for broadcast media reform to demonstrate fluctuation in the relationship between civil society, media magnates, and oligarchic political parties. I collected data through fieldwork, interview with civil society in the media sector, media practitioners and journalists, KPI commissioners and academics, along with documentation for media and internet-based media during 2 decades. So I like to come up with finding and discussion. I will briefly touch 3 issues. The first one, elite power and broadcast media relation. The second one, KPI's role. And the last one is about civil society's activisms. The first one is about elite power and broadcast media relation. So the huge interest of the elites in the business and politics after the Reformation influenced the process of democratization. One big example of this political process is the policy failure of implementing the broadcasting law of 2002 resulted from oligarchies' attacks. In other words, oligarchic elites after the Reformation, under decentralization and electoral politics, organized in political parties and business networks, especially media business and extractive business, to build their power and political network to win in the electoral democracy. Thus, those parties, elites and businessmen protected their political and media resources and supported with one another during 2 decades after the Reformation. So as a result, KBI or Indonesian Broadcasting Commission is even harder to control the oligarchic elite and businessmen behind the media sector. In fact, most private commercial media were owned by politicians, and that is why they were under elite's control, especially in the electoral process. TV1 belongs to Abu Rizal Bakri, therefore tend to support Golkar Party and their coalition. Metro TV belonged to Surya Paloh, therefore fatally supported the Nasdem Party and their coalition. Indeed, the political realms and elites' mindset this phenomena is considered trivial, but in the broadcasting media sector, this is a systemic violation of the main principle of broadcasting law, public good and democratization, and against democratization. So let's come to KPI's role in this broadcast media reform. KPI or Indonesian Broadcasting Commission is the mandate of the broadcasting law of 2002, which regulates the broadcast media sector. KPI should ideally be independent and free from political and business interests in regulating the media. Therefore, its members must be selected fairly and supported to play this role independently. Mostly, its members often came from civil organization, or academics. However, the problem lies in the fact that election process is very little bit clientelistic. In fact, invisible lobbyists queue in the process of becoming a member of KPI to be commissioners. It is certain that there will be organizational and personal lobbying to internal political parties and organizations because they are chosen by DPR or Indonesian parliament that come from political parties. So in fact, elites and political parties are part of the political and business network of media owners. In the DPR or Indonesian parliament, the elected commissioners in fact are people who can be managed by the elite, political parties and media owners. They are not fully professional. Let's come to civil society activism and role. Civil society oversees the implementation of the broadcasting law of 2002 and the performance of the KPI. During 2 decades after the reformation, the broadcasting law of 2002 is still considered weak in promoting full media democratization in the broadcasting sector and in responding to new structure and circumstances of digital media era today. There are a couple of criticisms during 2 decades. First, criticism on the consistency of broadcasting media democratization to give licensing in the hands of KPI to push private commercial media on implementing the media regulation and the implementation of network broadcasting system in which the media should build infrastructure technology at the local level. A second criticism in protecting KPI and the media from the elite interests in the electoral moment and how to respond to digital platforms today. Thus, civil society weakened by uncertain broadcast reform, KPI and the elite have been very slow to respond to the issue of regulatory revision. Civil society is tired of waiting for the elite and KPI not to take it seriously. At the same time, civil society in this sector is difficult to grow and organize by the public and civil society because this issue is too small and a bit sectoral. Also, the consistency of civil society in this sector is heavily influenced by genre, which have recently been decreasing. Even some communities and media advocacy dies and are not feasible anymore in public space. In protected, uncertain situation and condition today, civil society leave the issue of legal revision and KPI's ideal role, and instead of seizing the time of internet today and developing digital literacy media to challenge the oligarchic tendencies today. For example, the online media RemoteTV.com, which promoted critical media literacy for young people. So in this context, the broadcast reform movement is increasingly unclear and lost its direction and tend to allow the elite to politicize the private media for their electoral political interest today. Finally, we come to the conclusion part. So I have 3 conclusions. The first one, it seems to me the political elites are too domineering the broadcast media and contributed to the policy failure of the broadcasting law of 2002 during 2 decades after the reformation, and they hijack the media in the electoral politics during 2 decades after the reformation. So this is the very sad story of broadcast media in Indonesia. And the second conclusion, KPI as the regulatory body or Indonesian Broadcasting Commission does not play its role optimally in regulating and managing media sectors. So KPI is full of limitation because being controlled by fantastically the party elites. And the last one, civil society is getting weaker in supporting democratization and public good in the broadcasting sector during 2 decades after the reformation. Thank you for joining my presentation. Until the next time.